He was abandoned for being weak, but he is a god who hides his power. Yogiri is a stupid, pathetic loser child walking in a corridor filled with corpses and bullets flying in all directions. He walks towards a camera and asks where Asako is, his caretaker. He continues walking towards a room and the door suddenly opens. A woman is wielding a gun as she holds Asako hostage. Asako asks the woman what she wants, but the woman tells her to shut up. The woman tells Yogiri to not move, otherwise she will blast Asako's brains. Suddenly, the woman drops dead to the floor. Asako is confused, but Yogiri simply hugs her and smiles while saying they should return. Suddenly, an older Yogiri is awoken from his sleep by his classmate Tamachika, who seems to be in a panic. He remembers that before taking a nap they were on a class trip and asked if they already arrived. However, Tamachika tells him to wake up and see what's going on. Yogiri sees several of his classmates lifeless in their pools of sauce. He notices that one of them is pierced by something strange and asks what it is. He decides to look outside the bus and notices something wrapping around it. To figure it out, he grabs a mic on the floor and throws it. The thing starts moving and Yogiri realizes that is a huge wyvern. The monster flies up and decides to charge at the bus while preparing to breathe fire. Suddenly, Tamachika hugs him in despair. That moment rewires Yogiri's brain. The sensation of a plot-filled girl holding onto his arm changes his mind, and he tells the wyvern to die. In the next second, the wyvern suddenly collapses onto the floor. Yogiri tells Tamachika that they're safe, but she's confused and asks about what's going on. Yogiri asks Tamachika to tell him what happened. Tamachika reveals their bus was driving casually through the night. However, after passing past a tunnel, they found themselves in this strange field. Everyone was confused. Suddenly, a girl entered the bus and greeted everyone inside. She introduced herself as Sion, the granddaughter of the great sage. Their teacher got up to complain, but the girl simply popped his head right away. The girl then acted like nothing, telling the kids to calm down and pay attention without doing anything stupid. She then explains she summoned everyone here because she's looking for sage candidates. She casts some magic and several students start glowing. Sion then reveals she installed the Battlesong version in all the glowing students and they should see some logos on the screen. Tamachika is confused and asks her friend if she can see anything. Her friend uses her fingers to touch some air, explaining she sees some colorful letters saying status. Sion then reveals this system can only be used in this world and is called the gift, and everyone must use it to become sages within the next month. Sion reveals that if nobody becomes a sage, they will all become livestock to produce magical energy. Sion then explains their first mission will start in an hour, and they should try to not get wiped out right away. She then walks away and their mission appears on their screen. Turns out their job is to escape from the incoming dragon. Yazaki tries to become the leader and asks about their strengths and weaknesses. Everyone writes their stats, but Tamachika realizes that there are 4 students, including her, who didn't glow. The students start getting out of the bus, but Yazaki won't let the 4 come with them because his class is the general. He decides to turn into a douche, breaking the bus chairs, and explains that this is the power of a gift. He's only level 1, but he's way stronger than those 4 pleb humans. The other girl tells Yazaki that if he's strong, they should protect them. However, Yazaki replies this is part of the plan and tells the girl by his side to use her gift. She activates her charm ability, which will attract the dragon to attack them while giving the rest a chance to escape. Yazaki locks the door and leaves with the rest. They try to open it out for a while when they suddenly hear a noise outside. Tamachika thinks it's a dragon when suddenly something crashes against the bus. The guy freaks out and Tamachika notices the girl was taken out. Tamachika asks if Yogiri did something, but he replies the dragon crashed onto the floor and died. She knows it's a lie, but they decide to get out through the window. Outside, Tamachika points out that 3 of their classmates are flying. Yogiri is impressed by her sight at long range and asks if he should kill them. She asks what is wrong with his mind. But Yogiri simply replies they left them behind to die, and they could be hostile toward them. The guys are confused because the dragon is dead. They notice that Tamachika is still alive and complain because they wanted to turn her corpse into a zombie. Hearing those words, Tamachika realizes they clearly cannot be friends. Suddenly, one of the guys casts a huge fireball that barely misses Tamachika. The guy then tells her to come to his side without resisting so that they can have a fun time with her. Tamachika realizes they're all after her body. Yogiri points at the fireball guy and tells him to die. The other 2 laugh it out, but get shocked to see the guy randomly hug the floor. Yogiri tells them to not move, but the necromancer tries to check on his friend. Yogiri tells him to die as well. Only Fatso remains, and Yogiri says that if he moves, he will die. Yogiri orders Fatso to check if the other two are truly dead. Fatso complies and uses his healing ability, mentioning he can cure anything in an instant. However, his friends don't move. Fatso complains that Yogiri went too far, but our boy simply explains he only did it because they tried to attack him. He then explains that his ability is a literal mental death note called instant death. He just needs to think about who he wants to kill, and they just die. Fatso accepts defeat and gets close to Yogiri. He's preparing to attack him with a magic attack, however, Yogiri simply tells him to stop because his skill also allows him to know if someone wants to kill him or not. And to make it worse, he can combine the two abilities. In short, he doesn't need to know who's trying to kill him. Yogiri decides to kill him, but Fatso pulls out a slave collar and he puts it on himself. Yogiri decides to not kill him. Instead, Fatso should head to the forest full of monsters and wait there. But before leaving, Fatso should leave all his items and never tell anyone about the Yogiri and Tamachika. Fatso obeys orders and Tamachika asks if this is okay. Yogiri replies that Fatso will betray them, therefore it's better this way. She then asks if he isn't suspicious that she might betray him too. Yogiri doesn't mind because he's the one who decided to protect her. She blushes and asks why he decided to protect her. Yogiri admits it was all because of her soft and juicy developed plot. She blushes and gets angry, complaining that men are all the same. Yogiri and Tamachika manage to reach the nearby city, where a fox girl named Mairyu then approaches them, asking if they are sage candidates. The cat girl explains she wants to show them around. However, they end up surrounded after Tamachika's shopping spree. Tamachika apologizes, mentioning that Mairyu looked kind. The bandits reveal that sage candidates who have no gifts are perfect to beat up and sell. Tamachika starts to freak out, but our Sigma Yogiri is still chilling. Tamachika tries to warn Mairyu up, explaining that Yogiri is actually strong despite his looks. This stupid cat girl thinks this is all a bluff. Yet Yogiri pulls his verbal death note and orders everyone behind him to die. The rest of the bandits get confused, but Yogiri continues to order more people to die. Tamachika says that Yogiri is so harsh. He reveals that he tried to go easy on them and orders this dog's eyeballs to die. The guy becomes blind, shocking everyone. Yogiri continues his onslaught, thinking that it's not efficient to kill individual body parts. Mairyu tries to play the victim, asking for help as her little brothers are waiting for her to go home. Yet Yogiri simply replies that's not a reason to steal and kill people. The last guy asks if he isn't talentless, but Yogiri points his finger at them and tells them to die. However, they are still alive and try to run away. Tamachika asks if he is letting them go, but Yogiri replies he delayed his order. The two bandits manage to hide themselves, but the death is activated. Yogiri tells Tamachika it's time to leave, but they're stopped by some guards who want to know about the situation. Yogiri lies and explains they got lost and found everyone dead on the floor. But the guards know it's a lie because they saw everyone fall out of nowhere when they were about to attack the two. One of the guards uses his appraisal skill and reveals that neither Yogiri nor Tamachika have gifts. This means they cannot do anything to the two because they have no powers. The guy apologizes because his captain is as rude as your everyday Karen. Yogiri asks the dude if he knows a place where they could stay the night. They take them to a huge inn mansion where Tamachika sees a spirit inside her room. The spirit introduces herself as Makamoko, her ancestor and guardian spirit. Tamachika is confused, and the spirit reveals that she appeared to help her in this emergency. Tamachika asks why now and not earlier. However, the spirit reveals that she was afraid that Yogiri might erase her. Tamachika asks about the spirit coming here to help her. In short, the spirit reveals that the reason why Tamachika doesn't have a gift is because she protected her. Tamachika gets angry and asks her why, but the spirit reveals that gifts allow Sion to control her life. Still, the spirit is happy because she finally has a successor for her school of archery. Tamachika ignores her mentioning that she wants to return to her world, but she can only rely on Yogiri for the moment. The spirit gets excited, mentioning that's the reason why teach her the true martial arts. The next morning, they board a train, and Tamachika's ancestor is still scared of Yogiri. Tamachika asks if he can see her ancestor, to which he reveals that he only saw her from the moment Tamachika talked about it. Suddenly, he pushes Tamachika down and a huge explosion blows the ceiling away. A message orders the passengers to stay put as there's a sage fighting an aggressor. They look around and see a huge mecha robot, which Yogiri realizes is the aggressor. The sage launches several attacks at the robot. Tomochika asks if Yogiri can get rid of those two because they're on their way. But Yogiri explains that he has some rules to use his power, otherwise he would simply kill everyone who annoys him. She apologizes for being naive when suddenly there's a huge attack coming in their way. Luckily, the robot takes the attack. The sage complains the robot is moving and attacks with a huge ice spell. The passengers get frozen, but Yogiri manages to protect Tomochika. Yogiri asks why he attacked them, but the sage tells him to kneel down and praise him like a dog. He starts insulting Yogiri, but Yogiri thinks about killing him. The sage falls flat on the floor and Tomochika asks if he did it. He simply replies he had a good enough reason to do it. The robot approaches them mentioning he has no intention to fight. The robot wants to negotiate with Yogiri, promising to give him anything he wants. Tomochika realizes the robot is afraid of Yogiri, but our boy asks if there's a way to return to their world. The robot mentions he knows a way to return to the world where he came from. Yogiri asks if the robot can take them there, but the robot refuses to bring someone as dangerous as Yogiri to his world. He then explains that this world is at one of the lowest levels and climbing up requires a huge amount of energy and the right coordinates. Yogiri then asks the robot to give him advice on how to find the energy and coordinates to return to his world. Later that day, the guards find out the sage that was defeated by Yogiri. Xian also finds out and talks with Lane, another sage. Lane is interested in Yogiri's instant death ability, but Xian reveals that the sage is supposed to have instant death resistance. Xian leaves and Lane tells her subordinate to head to Hanabusa City and find out Yogiri and Tomochika. Meanwhile, the two rest for the night in the woods where Tomochika's ancestor reveals that she turned her underwear into a katana. They walk through the forest until they reach Hanabusa City. Tomochika happily mentions that it looks like Japan, but notices that Yogiri has a poor physical condition. Yogiri, however, replies that's normal because he killed enemies on their way. She gets confused, but when looks back, notices monsters and bandits who tried to attack them. She asks that since he's tired, his power must have a limit. Yet Yogiri replies that he can use it as much as he wants, but he will feel tired after using it. They get inside the city, and the spirit notices there are barriers instead of walls. Tomochika looks around and sees the huge hotel the previous inn lady told them about. They decide to stay there and get inside, where they meet Takabana, their classmate. He's happy to see Tomochika, and she asks why he's here instead of being with the others. Takabana replies he split with them because they're inefficient with their leveling. Yet, there's a maid girl who isn't happy with Tomochika being friendly towards Takabana. The guy tells her to calm down because they're classmates. The girl shuts up, but there's another one who praises Takabana. Tomochika is confused and asks Yogiri if he knows what is this all about, but he doesn't. Takabana then introduces them to the maid girls, mentioning they're his bodyguards. There's a total of 5 girls severing this piece of trash. The 5 girls introduce themselves, but also use this chance to threaten Tomochika. She doesn't understand what is this all about, but Takabana apologizes because he's a beta who isn't strict with girls. He orders the girls to shut up and Yogiri asks Tomochika if this guy also left them behind. He mentions that he doesn't know what kind of ability Takabana has, but he seems quite confident. Yet Tomochika reveals that this loser has always been like this. He was always popular with girls and a narcissist. Yogiri is surprised, mentioning that school is more interesting than he thought. Suddenly, this trash calls this fate and invites Tomochika to become his lover. He knows this was sudden to ask, but Tomochika is shocked. The guy goes on, telling her to not worry about Yogiri. He doesn't usually accept guys, but he can give him some special treatment. Tomochika is shocked because this guy still keeps going. Even Yogiri mentions that he doesn't feel killing intent thanks to this nonsense. Tomochika asks why he is so confident and Takabana replies he has the Dominator class. In short, he can dominate everyone who's weaker than him. She's still shocked by his words and mentions that he hasn't leveled up that much when compared to the others who are training in the primeval forest. This dumbass thinks she's into him and decides to explain everything. It all started when they threw a party after completing their first mission. Four Eyes came to him and gave him some advice. Four Eyes' class is a consultant. In short, he's a master plotter and scammer. Four Eyes mentioned how everyone was avoiding Takabana because of his class and mentioned that if someone doesn't become a sage, everyone will become livestock. and that's why he tells Takabana that he should buy a large number of the cheapest level 1 servants. In short, the servants will fight for him, and if they win the battle, the opponent will become his servant, but also get the experience points. Yet Takabana mentions that his abilities don't have that information. Four Eyes reveals that his consultant class allows him to see the hidden details of others. Takabana wants to know why Four Eyes is trying to help, but our master plotter just wants to make sure that everyone has a chance to become a sage and wishes him good luck. After that story, Tomochiko thinks support types are too strong in this world. Yogiri understands that while they're speaking, Takabana's number of servants and level is rising. The cocky guy confirms it and asks Tomochiko again to become his lover. She rejects him, but he tells her to think about it and reply later. He leaves the place and she reveals that he's annoying. Still, Yogiri thinks it would be safer for her to be by Takabana's side when compared to him. She asks if he's trying to make her angry, but he doesn't understand her reaction. Later, Yogiri is resting on his bed while Tomochiko wonders how long they're supposed to stay in that place. The spirit says they should leave after Yogiri wakes up, but Tomochiko replies it's been already 3 days. She asks the spirit to check on him, but the spirit refuses to because she doesn't know what he will do to her. Tomochiko then mentions that she's tired of staying inside and wants to go outside for a while. Suddenly, she sees some smoke on the streets. This is because the guy whom Lane told to take care of Yogiri is coming into the city and destroying everything. The guy announces that his immortal army is recruiting and that if the citizens die, they will become zombie soldiers. The spirit tells Tomochiko this isn't good as it smells like death. Tomochiko gets shocked and asks how this world can be so weird because people easily die here. Meanwhile, the other guy's maid is walking in the corridor while invisible. The spirit then asks if Tomochiko doesn't want to go outside, but she rejects it, mentioning it's way more comfortable inside. The spirit says they cannot stay here forever, especially when an enemy is targeting her right now, but they cannot see it. Tomochiko is confused and asks what they can do against someone they can't see. She decides to call Yogiri's room to wake him up, but the spirit thinks she's relying on him too much. Meanwhile, the phone rings while Yogiri dreams about his childhood. He remembers waking up to his dog licking his face and Asako telling him that breakfast was ready. He then wakes up from his dream and picks up the phone, promising to go to Tomochiko's room. Upon stepping outside, he sees the corridor is empty. However, the maid is invisible and pulls out a dagger. Yogiri closes his eyes and focuses on sensing the killing intent. He manages to see the girl and finds out that she plans to target Tomochiko. He pulls out his mental death note and the girl falls onto the floor. He gets inside Tomochiko's room and explains there was someone outside her room to kill her. Tomochiko is confused about why she would be targeted, but Yogiri simply calls the reception to say there's someone collapsed in the hallway. Tomochiko asks why he did that, but he replies they would suspect them if he didn't. Meanwhile, Takabana receives an alert mentioning that his maid signal has disappeared. But he must worry about the other monster inside this dungeon. The monster attacks him, but he uses the barrier to block it. He thinks this is boring and uses the barrier to attack, mutilating the monster's arm. One servant is quite happy, mentioning that he's way too strong for monsters on the 100th floor. The monster asks who Takabana is, but this guy uses his menu to use a flare bomb skill. The monster is defeated, and he then steps on him to make a contract. The monster calls him master, and the girl casts heal to restore its body parts. Takabana then asks how many floors there are in this dungeon and finds out it's 150. He then orders the monster to head to the bottom floor and collect more servants. The monster leaves and Takabana asks where the maidservant is. The other girl replies she should be in the hotel. Takabana then decides to use his skill to see her memories, but just watches her collapse. He thinks she was attacked from behind, but the other girl doesn't think she would let someone sneak on her. He then asks why the maid in the hallway was, to which the girl replies that there are two possibilities. First, she wanted to bring Tomochiko and make him happy. Second, she wanted to eliminate Tomochiko. He gets confused because that would be inconvenient to him. The girl explains that his servants' opinions don't always match his. He gets worried because that might make Tomochiko run away from him and orders two other servants to hold her in place. Back at the hotel, Tomochiko realizes that it was Takabana's maid and Yogiri thinks that this is bad. He tells Tomochiko to prepare her stuff to leave this place. She confirms it, but he's surprised that she's really calm in this situation. Tomochiko replies that she's used to seeing dead people while by his side. The spirit adds up, mentioning that humans will die anyway. Plus, her family members shouldn't be upset over something so basic. Tomochika gets angry and tells the spirit to stop talking about philosophy. They start running away, but another Takabana's servant appears, asking where they are going. Yogiri asks what she wants, but the girl casts a spell to restrain him inside an ice crystal. She happily reveals that her trash boss asked to bring Tomochiko to him. Yet Yogiri simply punches the ice and gets free. The girl and Tomochiko are confused because it should be easy to break it. Yet Yogiri replies that he tried to kill the ice, which worked. Tomochiko is confused and asks what he means by killing the ice. The servant is in shock and starts casting more magic. Yet Yogiri kills the magic and then her staff. The girl falls to her knees and he explains that he can kill anything he thinks about. Therefore, she should be a good girl and answer some questions. She accepts, and he asks if she can use magic without a staff. The girl reveals that due to her class, she can only use magic when holding a staff. Yogiri knows this means that she must have some spare ones. The girl confirms and pulls another wand from Happyland. Tomochika asks why she is hiding it there, but also tells Yogiri to stop looking. He's surprised because he didn't expect that she could use them in that way. He then talks about what she just said about taking Tomochika to Takabana and asks about the others. She answers that everyone received the same order. Suddenly, another girl is on the ceiling and tries to attack Tomochika. She quickly uses her judo skills to put the girl down. Yogiri is surprised, but the spirit mentions that Tomochiko's martial art talents are awakening. However, when they properly look at the girl, they notice it's a doll. More dolls surround them, and the other girl pulls another wand from her hair, mentioning that she thought she could do this on her own. Yogiri's eyes shine, and the girl drops dead onto the floor. The girl who controls the dolls is sitting on the stairs and orders them to deal with it, but to let Tomochiko live. However, Yogiri kills every doll. The girl starts to panic, and they manage to find her. She begs them to not kill her, making Tomochika feel like they're the real villains. Meanwhile, Takabana feels again that his servant is dead, and the little girl has lost her will to fight and told Yogiri and Tomochika everything. Upon hearing the conversation, he tells the other maids that Yogiri can kill anything just by thinking. They all find it hard to believe it, but Takabana thinks they should observe them first and lead them to a place where they can ambush them. Tomochika and Yogiri start walking down the stairs until they see it filled with cockroaches. She screams in fear, and when Yogiri is about to say its name, she stops him because it will traumatize her. The spirit knows Takabana is using the insects to watch over them. Tomochika asks if Yogiri can kill them, which he confirms, but the insects will reign over their heads. She refuses that idea, but he mentions they could enter her mouth and suffocate her. She imagines it and decides to get revenge on Takabana. The spirit mentions that Takabana could make the whole world their enemy. Takabana watches the situation, thinking that Yogiri cannot do anything. He thinks about using the roaches to make them scream and chase them. However, his maid says that he should be careful because they don't know about Yogiri's power. He refuses to give up and orders the roaches to kill Yogiri. They all activate the bloodlust, making Tomochika feel scared. Yogiri says they should kill Takabana because he thinks it won't take too much effort. He uses the roaches' killing intent to track Takabana's position and tells him to die. Takabana collapses on the floor, making all his servants shocked. Yet Tomochika is freaking out because he failed and the roaches are still alive. Yogiri explains his power never fails because if his enemies can reach him, he can also reach them. After all, the world won't let someone act without consequences. Tomochiko notices the roaches are more active, and he explains that's because Takabana's death has set them free. She panics, but he grabs her arm and tells her to run. Meanwhile, Takabana's servants are still trying to heal him from the dead. The other one tells her they're free now and walks away. Yogiri and Tomochiko then walk through an alley to leave the city, but they suddenly hear screams. Upon checking, they see the city filled with zombies. The zombies start wreaking havoc in the city, and Tomochika questions what is happening. Yogiri, however, mentions the zombies are slow and it should be possible to escape if they're careful. Tomochika asks if they cannot help, and Yogiri replies it will be hard to save the city. Even the spirit tells them to get out before everything gets worse. Meanwhile, the city manor complains about Masayuki, who released the zombies into the city, explaining that Lane, the vampire sage, gave him the city managing rights. Masayuki simply tells him to not worry because the sage candidate era is under Lane. Plus, the mayor shouldn't be worried because they fought the same battles. The mayor replies Masayuki already died and became an undead, therefore he should group his zombies and leave the city. The zombie dude, however, reveals this was Lane's order. He tells the mayor to hand him the key to the city. Since it's an order, the mayor gives him the key and asks what he will be doing. However, Masuki replies it's nothing important. He then uses the speakers around the city to order his zombies to stop moving. The guy then introduces himself to every citizen and uses a huge screen to show Yogiri and Tomochika's pictures. He explains that he's searching for them and the remaining humans should bring them to the central plaza within 1 hour. If the citizens don't do it, he will make his zombies move again. At that same moment, Yogiri and Tomochika were trying to sneak outside the city. They hear everything the other guy has said, but also hear that he locked the whole city to prevent everyone from running. With this, every citizen understands they have 2 options: to capture Yogiri and Tomochika or to become a zombie. The mayor suddenly enters the room the other guy is speaking from, complaining about hurting the citizens. However, the guy replies that if he didn't threaten them, they would never look for the other 2. Everyone around the city starts looking for the other 2, which forces them to hide in alleys. Tomochika thinks humans are now way more dangerous than zombies, but Yogiri replies they must run to avoid being found. Tomochika then asks why they are being chased. Yogiri thinks about it and replies it must probably be because he killed the other sage. Suddenly, 3 girls manage to find them and promise to take the 2, even if it means killing them. Yogiri thinks this was quite fast and warns the guys that if they get close, he will kill them. One of the guys ignores him and tries to attack, forcing Yogiri to mentally death note him. The others start to panic, and Tomochika starts complaining about this being a disgusting way to carry out a promise. Yogiri replies these guys are trying to kill them, so they should also expect to be killed. He then notices the other 2 running away and thinks Masuki is only instigating this because they think Yogiri cannot kill a normal person. He reveals that he's now annoyed and thinks about going to the plaza to negotiate with Masuki. They head out to meet him, but find the place to be quite grim, as if it was Halloween. Tomochika even thinks this is the most fantasy-like stuff she has seen in this world. Upon getting close, Yogiri asks who's Masuki. The guy initially doesn't recognize them and asks if they came here because they gave up running. He calls them boring for trying to sacrifice themselves for the people, but Yogiri calls him stupid. Tomochika starts to panic after hearing those words, and Masuki asks what Yogiri wants because if he kills him, the game is over. Yogiri replies he wants to get on a train and go to the royal capital, therefore, it would be kind of Masuki if he removes the barrier around the city. Masuki is shocked to hear those words and gets angry. He starts complaining, mentioning that Yogiri is in a bad position to negotiate right now. Yogiri realizes that's true and thinks he must have something to offer. Therefore, he simply says that he will let Masuki live even though he should that would be a bad thing. Masuki gets even angrier, calling Yogiri crazy and asking if he wants to die right now. He orders his Immortal Core army to attack Yogiri, explaining that Yogiri cannot kill something that is already dead. But as you expect, our boy orders them to die, and they all collapse. Masuki is shocked because he cannot understand what's going on, and the mayor uses this chance to say he's not involved in anything. Yet Masuki wants to know how the dead just died. Yogiri replies he also doesn't know about it, but since the undead were moving, it pretty much means they were alive. Tomochika then complains about how Yogiri ignored what just happened, but just answered it. Masuki still could not believe what had just happened, but Yogiri gave the biggest Chad answer. He's the one who decides what's dead. In short, if it moves, it's alive. If they stop, they're dead. Masuki gets angry and calls out his master Lane, but Yogiri simply asks what he is going to do since his comrades are already dead. The guy gets down and refuses to accept Yogiri's instant death ability. He starts transforming into a mix of Batman with werewolf, but Yogiri tells him to die. Tomochika complained she wanted to see the transformation first. Yet Yogiri doesn't understand why he should do it. She then asks what they are going to do now because they cannot negotiate with the dead undead. However, Yogiri says that's not a problem and approaches the mayor. The guy panics and begs to stay alive, promising that he just wants his city to stay safe. Yogiri simply replies they just did this to protect themselves. The mayor then explains this is all because Sage Lane ordered Masuki to kill the 2. Upon hearing that name, Tomochika questions if Sion isn't the real name. The mayor then explains that Sion is also a sage, but this city is under Lane's control. Tomochika is confused because they came to this world because of Sion, and now another sage wants to kill them. The mayor explains he doesn't know much about it, but he doesn't usually interfere with sage candidates. The spirit then calls out Yogiri, but he replies that there's some sort of spiritual manipulation heading to that area. Suddenly, Yogiri starts feeling killing intent all around the plaza. Every citizen gears near, making everyone confused. The mayor then checks Masuki's body, explaining that if they're using spirit magic, then the city barriers should keep them safe. He tries to activate the key, but it doesn't work. He then realizes that Lane is the one controlling the barrier. Meanwhile, Lane is trying to direct a huge monster towards the city. Her new vampire servant, which is one of Takabane's slaves that she transformed, complains this is dangerous. Lane, however, explains that Takabane got killed from a distance because his hostility was traced. Lane asks how she rates Yogiri's threat level, and the servant replies it's above a sage or any mythical being. She wants Lane to stay away from Yogiri, but Lane refuses to. Lane realizes that despite her servant knowing that she's immortal, she's worried about her. That means that Yogiri must be some sort of god of death. Meanwhile, inside the city, Tomochika asks if Yogiri cannot kill the source controlling the citizens. He replies this is different than Takabane's case. He starts killing everyone who tries to attack them, and people fall one by one. He feels like this is just a test like they used to do to him when he was a kid. Yogiri then notices the mayor in a panic to see his citizens die in front of him. He tells him to get closer, but Lane reveals that her plan is to cause Yogiri's death indirectly. She then creates another clone of herself and orders her clone to fly up and create even more clones. Yogiri notices the killing intent gets stronger, but she then notices the dark aggressor. The huge aggressor destroys everything he passes through, and they begin to panic. Yet, at the same time, Lane reveals that since her clones know nothing about Yogiri, they have no killing intent toward him. He then orders his clones to attack the city when the aggressor either tries to attack or dies. Tomochika then asks Yogiri if he can kill the aggressor. He replies yes, which shocks her because she didn't expect it. The mayor begs Yogiri to save the city, but he has a bad feeling about doing it. Nevertheless, he orders the aggressor to die, and while it's taking effect, he notices the city being attacked from the air. He saves Tomochika from being hit, but she wonders if this attack came from the aggressor. Yogiri reveals he killed the aggressor, however, this attack blended with the darkness's killing intent to remain unnoticed. He realizes this attack has no target, but the goal is to destroy everyone in it. He thinks everything until now was just a test, but Tomochika tells him to stop enjoying his new pillow. They then get up and Yogiri explains he doesn't know what's happening. Upon looking at the sky, Tomochika explains she sees several women in a dress raining form the sky. The mayor realizes that's Lane and Tomochika asks if Yogiri can do anything to her. He explains that he cannot do anything because she isn't aiming at him. Plus, they're all moving so fast that he cannot find them. In short, this all planned to deal with his skill. Since all women look the same, Tomochika asks how many Lanes exist. The mayor then reveals they're clones because Lane has super regeneration abilities. Upon hearing that, Yogiri reveals he can deal with it, but it would be easier if she aimed at him. The mayor then brings out a hologram of the city and explains there's a pattern to the attacks. It doesn't attack the same place twice, and the attacks aren't also made close to each other. The spirit even calls Lane dumb because she's trying to make it random, but she made it consistent instead. Tomochika thinks they can use this information to predict where will be the next attack. The mayor quickly realizes where it will be, and Yogiri says he will be heading there. The mayor then reveals he will help him with his teleportation ability. Yet Tomochika also wants to come. Yogiri tells her to hide, but says she's the only one who can see everything. The spirit also wants to help, and they decide to teleport away. Yogiri and Tomochika hold hands, and she leads him to where the clone will hit. He orders the clone to die, and the spirit uses an ability to create a shield around them. After the impact, the shield is retrieved and Tomochika is relieved because she thought she would die. Yogiri then notices something on Tomochika's hand and asks what it is. In short, the spirit used its power to combine some of Tomochika's underwear with the power of the previous aggressor that can transform into a shelter. Yet, the spirit is worried because defeating the clones won't help in the endgame. Yogiri, however, replies it's all fine. The clones then fall and disappear, making Lane question how immortal vampires can die. Her servant tells her they shouldn't target Yogiri, but Lane replies she just needs to make new clones with different settings. Suddenly, there's a strange feeling in her body, and she realizes her true body, which was hidden in another dimension, is dead. She then goes on a bungee jumping without rope, but thinks this is how she will save the girl. She suddenly disappears and Tomochika realizes there aren't any attacks coming. With this, they return to the mayor to get everything ready and escape. Meanwhile, in a random house, a young girl wakes up and notices her bed looks like a coffin. She thinks she's a vampire and sees a rock in her hand. The rock shows Lane's hologram, explaining that her plan was successful and she died while the girl survived. She then tells the girl that she is a younger clone made from her who didn't get her memories to avoid being targeted by Yogiri. Back in the city, the mayor thanks them for their help and gets them a car, telling them to be careful. Upon getting inside, Tomochika complains that Yogiri is playing games instead of driving. He explains that's because he always crashes his car into walls when he plays games, therefore he cannot drive. With that, Tomochika is ready to drive, and the spirit reveals that her family has the skills to drive anything. While driving through a canyon, Tomochika tries to wake Yogiri up and convince him to drive. Yet Yogiri is dreaming about the moment he met Asaka, his foster mother. That day, Asaka was taking a job interview to work for a research institute. But upon reading the contract, she noticed a clause that she couldn't complain if the job was the cause of her death. She tries to obviously reject it and leave, however, they force her to sign it. She thought this was the base of an evil organization, but Yukio, the interviewer, tried to dismiss it. While taking the lift, she wanted to know the details about her job, yet Yukio replied that she simply had to take care of a monster. She's shocked to hear it, but Yukio explains they do cursed experiments in their institute. Upon reaching the bottom floor, she notices how dark it is with something written on the doors. Yukio explains that's a scripture. She asks where he is taking her, and he reveals it's to her workplace. While taking another lift, he asks if she knows about Alpha Omega. Since she doesn't, he explains that it means everything or eternity. And that's the name of the test subject she will be taking care of. Asaka asks if that subject is human, but Yukio cannot give her an answer because he has never seen it. All he knows is that Alpha Omega can kill anything he wants just by thinking. Asaka cannot believe they expect her to take care of a monster like that. Yet Yukio replies that's possible because she has a teacher's license. She realizes that's the only reason she got this job, but Yukio tries to explain that if she doesn't do it, humanity could perish. He explains they think they can only avoid that outcome by providing him with an adequate education. She complains because there are other people more suitable for this job. Yet Yukio reveals she's the perfect fit for the job. After finally reaching the final floor, she notices a vault door. Yukio explains he cannot get further from here and gives her some papers with instructions. He wishes her good luck and takes the lift up. She uses her card to open the vault and upon stepping inside, notices how it's not what she expected. She follows the map and reaches a house, but she doesn't seem to find anybody inside. She then hears some noise from a room and opens the door. She then sees that Alpha Omega is just a little innocent kid. Despite the shock, she complains about everyone being scared of a little kid and picks him up. She goes outside and throws him onto the floor, telling him to be a normal kid and play outside. The kid is confused but points his finger at her. She gets scared after remembering that he can kill anything just by thinking. Suddenly, she hears something dropping to the floor and sees some sort of shadow. The kid revealed that thing was hiding in her shadow just to get here. She asks about it, and he calls it a demon, while also revealing they often come there to kill him. Asaka is confused, and the kid tells her that he doesn't mind playing outside, but asks if he can do it tomorrow because it's almost evening. Asaka realizes she forgot about it after losing her head and helps him get up. She introduces herself and asks the kid for his name. He replies they call him Alpha Omega, but before he came there, he was called Lord Akakushi. He then tells her that he's hungry, making her realize that she must also prepare his meals. She checks the fridge and realizes that she cannot cook at all. While checking every kitchen compartment, she finds some cup noodles and gives him to eat. Upon tasting, the kid mentions he likes it, but Asaka is still thinking about his name. She asks about his parents, but the kid doesn't know what's a parent. She apologizes, and upon looking at him, she thinks about a dog and names him Yogiri. The kid asks if Taketu Yogiri sounds good. Asaka doesn't understand why she's using her family name, but realizes that he doesn't know what's a family. She decides to let him use that name and teaches him how to handshake and greet someone. Meanwhile, Tomochika wakes him up to tell him about the boulder in their path. She mentions how he was asleep for the whole time, but he explains that it's because he used too much power in the last city. Yogiri then asks the most important question, why are they even going to the capital? Tomochika is shocked because he could have asked that question before they left. Yogiri explains their goal to return to Japan, and to do that, they must talk to Sion. But he thinks there's a better way to talk to her without going to the capital. Tamachika replies their classmates are all going there. She then starts driving back, hoping that she can find another route to take them to the capital, but they suddenly bump into something. Upon checking outside, they see a dragon who prepares to attack them, but Yogiri orders it to die. Tamachika feels relieved until she notices a lot more dragons flying their way. Yogiri realizes they're in their territory. The dragons prepare to breathe fire, and Tamachika grabs his arm, asking him to do something. Since the dragons have killing intent, Yogiri orders them all to die. The dragons start raining down, making Tamachika even compare it to a dragon insecticide commercial. She sighs in relief until she notices they're being covered by a big shadow. Upon looking up, she sees a huge golden thunder dragon in front of them. She starts freaking out, thinking she will be struck by lightning, but Yogiri reveals he doesn't sense any killing intent. The dragon looks at them and tells them they have passed. Tamachika is confused by those words, but the dragon turns around and flies away in panic. Yet Yogiri yells at it to wait and asks why the dragons attacked them if they can understand them. The dragon ignores him, but Yogiri promises that he will do the same thing he did to the other dragons. Turns out the huge dragon is actually a little girl who's shaking in fear. She knew she should have flown away without talking. Tamachika is confused about her new appearance, and the spirit reveals it happens a lot in parallel worlds. Yogiri asks why the girl attacked them. The girl explains she was trying to see if they were qualified to meet the Swordmaster. Yogiri and Tamachika are confused by those words. The girl asks if they haven't come to see the Sword Saint. They respond they couldn't give less of a cat because all they want is to get to the capital. The girl explains the Sword Saint is in this canyon and that if they meet them, they could get a gift. In short, she's only here to test people who want to meet him. However, our duo still couldn't care more about it. The little girl goes on to say how great the Sword Dude is, mentioning he can rival the sages. With that, Yogiri thinks he must have some information on how to return to their original world. Yet Tamachika thinks they shouldn't take a detour because they're already lost. The lowly uses this chance to propose a deal. She will guide them to the capital, but first, they must meet the Sword Dude. They accept the deal, and she introduces herself as Attila. After a quick drive, they reach a spot where several people are gathered, waiting for the Sword Dude. Everyone starts complaining about them cheating for coming in a vehicle. Yogiri is confused about everyone's words, but Attila explains that today is the selection for the Knight of the Holy King. In short, if someone becomes a Knight of the Holy King, they can become the Sword Saint disciple. Therefore, everyone here is aiming to become the next Sword Saint. Another guy looks at them and says they've been disqualified despite working so hard. Yet, another voice says the selection hasn't started, therefore nobody has been disqualified. Everyone then sees the Sword Saint. The old man then gives everyone their first trial, which is a battle royal to the death until he tells them to stop. Tamachika cannot believe the old geezer, but Yogiri asks the old guy if he can leave. Attila is confused, but the old man creates a rule that if Yogiri leaves the place, everyone will be disqualified. Everyone starts killing each other while Yogiri and Tamachika watch. A random group suddenly targets them, and since Yogiri has no other option, he decides to kill them. Yet, a random dude comes forth, promising to protect them. The random guy calls everyone a fool, mentioning they're all misunderstanding the Sword Dude's intention. He thinks this is a test to determine if they have the right personality to become a Knight of the Holy King. Tamachika thinks he's a decent person, but the spirit mentions he's skilled. The guy deals with multiple opponents at the same time, yet he doesn't have the intention to kill them. Some random guys start casting magic towards Yogiri, but he simply orders them to die. The random dude is confused about why they fell, but concludes it must have been the old guy punishing the lawless ones. Since everyone had given up on fighting them, he turned to the duo asking them to stay for a while longer while he protected them. Suddenly, the two hear a voice asking for help on the ground. They see a guy who is sliced in half trying to crawl and asking for a stone. She sees a rainbow-colored stone next to her and places it on his hand. The guy then crushes the stone and somehow regenerates his body. He thanks her for the help, but the sword guy tells them to stop and follow him because their numbers are lower now. He walks into the forest, and Tamachika wonders what they should do. Attila begs them to stay and participate. Yogiri is confused because she just wanted them to meet the Sword Saint. She then explains that if her recommendation becomes the Knight of the Holy King, she will become their servant. Yogiri thinks this is becoming troublesome, but since they haven't gotten any info, he will follow along. As they move, the other guys introduce themselves as Rick and the crystal guy as Lionel. He explains he was forced to accompany his friend to this trial. Yogiri asks Rick about the Sword Saint and Knight of the Holy King. Nick explains there that a holy knight deals with the gods who have been sealed away, which they call demons. He reveals the devil appeared 1,000 years ago and was sealed by the Holy King of that same era. Yogiri isn't sure the devil is still a threat after being sealed for so long, but Nick explains some followers are trying to unseal him. Tamachika also uses this chance to ask Lionel about the stone he had. He calls it an apology stone that can heal him from serious injuries or even be used as gacha tokens. Tamachika is confused, but he explains that his luck is negative. He quickly reveals that he turned into a sacrifice of a mysterious organization before coming to this world. Yet, suddenly a goddess appeared to him and gave him those stones. Tamachika uses this chance to ask the spirit if gods like to control people's destinies. The spirit replies that some people are guarded by spirits, but there are also some people whose fate gets decided by God. Rick asks what's a gacha and Lionel decides to show it off. He needs to use 3 stones per pull and throw them into the air. Suddenly, a normal scrub brush appears and he proudly explains he can exchange them for a random trash item. Yet, Tamachika notices that he only has 3 stones left in his bag. Lionel pathetically explains that he gets new stones every midnight, depending on how unlucky his day was. Suddenly, they see the other participants vanishing, but Attila tells them to not worry because that's an invisible barrier. Upon getting inside, they see a huge tower, but the spirit orders Tamachika to leave this place because she senses some evil miasma from the tower. Suddenly, Lionel starts throwing up and the spirit explains he got hit by the miasma. The spirit explains Tamachika is only feeling fine because she's being protected. Meanwhile, Yogiri is looking around and notices something. Lionel uses this stone and gets resistance to the miasma. Yogiri then asks Attila if it's fine to get inside the tower, but she isn't there. Nick explains that only people taking the trial are allowed inside. They get inside the tower and take an elevator the highest floor. There, the old guy tells them to look down. They see a huge energy ball and the old man explains that's the end of the world. Upon looking down, Tamachika sees monsters frozen in time during a huge battle. She notices there's a man in black and a woman in white at the center. She tells Yogiri the woman's sword is piercing the two and Rick explains that's the Holy King and the devil. The old guy explains his job is to guard this place. Suddenly, a girl named Frederica thinks this will all end if they beat the things inside the ball. Lionel calls her name, revealing that she's the friend who dragged him here. She tells the old man that his duty will end today and throws a huge fireball inside the energy ball. She's confident it's all over now, but the attack barely moves upon getting inside the energy ball. The old man explains that time flows slowly inside the barrier, therefore it will take some 100 years before it reaches the Dark Lord. The girl is shocked, but the old man points to another girl, explaining she will give the details of their trial. She reveals their goal is to go from the roof to the first floor of the tower within 24 hours. A girl asks if they can jump down from the roof, but the other replies they must first accumulate 100 points inside the tower. The duo notices they haven't seen her before, but notice that some other participants have been added. Tamachika ignores it and asks if Yogiri cannot kill the Dark God with his ability. However, she realizes that he has no reason to do it. She then looks at him, but he seems nervous. He then reveals he tried to kill the source of the miasma, and turns out he killed the Dark God. Watch this next video. See you on the next one.